Johnson liked to play big dog. He liked to show you how important it was. It made me very uncomfortable sometimes. He'd put me, and he'd start to go through his mail, and he'd hand me the letter, you know, from somebody, and I'd read it, but I really didn't want to know. But that was just him. He'd kind of sweep you into the orbit at that time. And I remember when they opened the new office, I think one of the first times I went in, and it had a little hall. You came in, and the office was off to the side. And when I came in, Johnson had this, I think it was a life-size photograph of himself down at the end, which, you know, you got in, and there's Johnson. And there was a desk in front for a receptionist. Here's this nice-looking young man. I couldn't have been, I figured, you know, about 18 or 19. And I went up to introduce myself, and I said, I'm Hugh Sidey. And he said, I'm Billy Don Moyers. And that's the first time I met Bill Moyers. He was outside the reception. We got to know each other, talked about it. He was living in Johnson's basement at that time. He was a young aide, and he went on to all his great fame and achievement. But I would hang around there, and I'd go in and see him every Thursday night, and they were sometimes wild sessions. I remember, and you see, that was the day also when Johnson would go down to for the leadership meeting, and he'd meet Ike, and they'd talk about the bills. And space was very big then. Again, I'd mentioned earlier about how Rayburn and Johnson were larger than life. They were really, in many weeks, months back then, the preeminent political figures in America. They were the ones that commented on space and the Cold War and the Soviet Union, you know, and their word was powerful because of appropriations, the money, but also, particularly in the space race, Johnson had moved in there after Sputnik and really made that kind of his baby and moved ahead and on in the defense appropriations. And that was the time, as you remember, when we were we were developing the missiles and the nuclear submarines and that whole thing. Congress very much involved with all of that, and Johnson right at the forefront. So, you know, you really wanted to know how things would go. You needed to plug in with those fellows, and Johnson, of course, used it to the hilt.